was saying before, I like to stress that leadership is a quality, not necessarily a role. And so that means that everyone can show leadership and not just, these examples that I've given here. And so now we'll talk about what it means to be a leader. And so first of all, I've got here, I'm not sure if it's gone off. Okay. But yeah, so I'm saying how it's not just about telling others what to do. So I think that's often a misconception about what a leader does, in that sort of, just giving tasks out to people and, just telling people what to do. But it's more about teamwork and sort of facilitating a team environment in the sort of group that you're in. So as a leader, it means that you have more roles and responsibilities, and that could be towards others within your own group. So for example, you have a extra responsibility to make sure that everyone's safe, and also to make sure that everyone's concerns are heard as well. And so that's really important in that everyone is happy to work in the environment that you're facilitating, and also that everyone feels like they're being treated equally as well. But also to achieve that, you've got to maintain an open communication within the whole team to make sure that everyone's concerns are addressed. But then you also have responsibilities on behalf of a team or behalf of your group. And that might be reporting to someone who's even more senior. So, for example, at school, it could be reporting to teachers or principals. In the workplace, it could be reporting to a higher boss. Or you could also be reporting to other groups or authorities who are interested in the work that you're doing as a team. And you could also be giving speeches. So you'd have to prepare those in advance and make sure that you're able to speak on behalf of your group and that everyone agrees with what your speech would be talking about. And finally, you are very much representing your team and group as well. So given that you might be reporting or interacting with other people on behalf of your team, then any impression that you give off of will essentially represent the impression of your team as well. And so additional roles could also include more exposure, like I was saying before, in terms of representing your team or your group, and leading from that. That will mean that also judgments will be made by others, not just towards you, but also towards your team. So it's really important that you represent yourself well. And finally, there's decision making, of course, in any team environment. And so as a leader, you need to be really good at being able to facilitate team decision making, especially under unexpected circumstances as well. And so in general, just interacting with others, you've got plenty of different opportunities to do that. And so communication is a really core skill that any leader must be good at. And so that could be within your team or your group. It could be with leaders of other teams as well, perhaps if they're doing a similar sort of work that you're towards the work that you're leading. And also you have to be speaking on behalf of others as well. And so it's really important that you're being inclusive of everyone within your group. You're also being inclusive of everyone that you're interacting with on behalf of your team. And so long story short, being a leader doesn't necessarily mean you get to tell what other people, it doesn't mean you get to tell others what to do, but it actually means you've got even more work and more effort that you need to put in. Okay, so now we'll dive a bit deeper into what are the qualities of leadership. So that'll be what the bulk of today's talk will be about. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, but there is a dedicated question Q&A time at the end, so I'll be happy to try and address as many questions as I can. Okay. So first of all, I've sort of got three broad categories of what sort of skills and qualities leaders have. And so the first one is interpersonal skills. So that's, I guess, relating to how you interact with others and how you present yourself. And so the four core skills that I've got here include communication, empathy, assertiveness, and engagement and teamwork. So we'll look at each one in a bit more detail. So with communication, of course, that is one of the most fundamental skills, not just in leadership, but also just in general interaction as well. And so when you communicate with others, make sure that you're clear and confident, make sure that your thoughts and ideas are heard and that you don't leave anything to doubt. And that if you have any concerns, feel free to raise it with the rest of the team so that everyone is able to work on it and people can help you out as well. But at the same time, you don't want to sound arrogant. So you also want to be, respectful towards what other people have to say. So it's not about, putting others down or, saying your idea is better than others. It's very much just about putting your idea out there and letting your team and that teamwork environment to sort of reach an overall consensus or decision about what is best for the team going forward. And that's really important because often at times, other members of your team might have different ideas that you might not have thought of. And so as a leader, it's really important that you embrace that rather than, put those down and just say, okay, go with what I've got in mind and that's it. So there is a balance between, being confident and, standing by what you believe in, but also making sure that everyone's opinions are being respected as well. Of course, you want to keep an open mind as well. So being receptive of other ideas, like I just mentioned. And it is really important that whenever you make decisions, that everyone is reaching a consensus. Because first of all, it makes sure that everyone knows what's going on and that, it doesn't surprise anyone. But also it makes everyone feel like that, they've all been heard. They've discussed through, the pros and cons of each sort of decision, and we're all happy with what the final choice is. And so as such, you have to be prepared to make compromises. So whenever there is a team discussion or a team decision, your idea might not necessarily be what the team decides on in the end. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, it's about what the team wants and, doing the best for the team. And so once again, as you're communicating, you need to be aware of the manner or the context in which your communication takes place. So whether that's, just a casual sort of, catch up or a meeting, within your team, then that can be quite casual. Or, if you're meeting with, let's say, a client, or a different sort of group of a different body, then in that case, it's very much a lot more formal. You have to be, addressing the appropriate people. And that will then affect the way that you, address people and you communicate with them as well, depending on the context. And so finally, just to sum it up, open communication is key in the team environment. And due to all the reasons that I've just mentioned, it's just making sure that everyone feels heard and that everyone knows what's going on as well. So for empathy, first of all, it isn't really about understanding someone's situation. It's more about just respecting other people's situations and being respectful of anything that could be going on as well. So you don't necessarily have to understand how people feel. So I think often at times that's a misconception about what empathy is. It's not the same as sympathy, and you don't have to, have been in other people's shoes to be able to display empathy. I think often at times it's just about playing a more sort of supportive role emotionally towards people, especially if they're going through like a hardship. And just, being respectful of, giving them their space and giving them their time to heal. And with empathy, it's really important that you remain confidential, especially if people are telling you, some private issues or some private details. Then you have to respect their confidentiality, that they don't want, other people to know about certain things. And so they're trusting you to keep it quiet. So you have to respect that space as well. And yet, so third point I've already mentioned, so it's about offering your emotional support when they're feeling down. And it's also about, guiding them through the healing process, so that, they're not feeling as though they're going through this hardship alone, and that you're sort of there to support them through or whatever happens. And finally, this sort of pertains more to what a team environment is, but it's about not being confrontational or judgmental. So this could be as a situation or as an example. For example, you could be in a team environment where someone just hasn't really been pulling their weight, or they haven't really engaged in team meetings. And as such, you might be thinking as, oh, okay, maybe they're slacked off, or maybe they're, just hoping the team in general will carry them along. But then, in reality, there could be, some underlying issue. Perhaps it could be, a family issue or some sort of incident that they want to keep private, but they're worried about telling others about. And so you have to be respectful of keeping an open mind, and not necessarily, just going straight to them and being like, oh, hey, why aren't you doing this and that? But more about, making sure that they're okay first, and trying to understand more about the situation before you sort of make any decisions or actions. Okay. And so assertiveness relates a little bit to communication as well, but it's more about how you present yourself, towards your teammates, and how you present yourself as a leader. And so once again, assertiveness isn't about telling others what to do, or to look down on others. And there is a clear difference between being assertive versus being just simply arrogant. And so, of course, you want to be confident in what you believe in and, confident in what you have to say. but at the same time, you don't want to necessarily put others down. So there is a bit of a fine line, but you know, as long as you stay aware of what to do and what not to do, then you should be okay in the end. And so it is very much about, you know, standing up for wrong behavior, whether that's within your team or whether, you know, that could be in a general context where you see something wrong happening, and it's about being confident enough to stand up to that and, you know, point that out and say, hey, you know, something's not right here and we need to do something about that. And it's also about, you know, not being afraid in any situation, which is a major challenge, and it's definitely easier said than done. I think with practice and with putting yourself outside your comfort zone more frequently, then that'll definitely help you get used to, you know, being able to act in, you know, different types of situations and not being afraid. And finally, yep, it is about fearless in adversity as well. So when things don't go right, you know, what do you do? Or, you know, how do you bounce back from, you know, when things don't go quite right? And so the final interpersonal skill is engagement and teamwork. So this is, you know, quite a broad thing in terms of, you know, teamwork probably is like an umbrella term for what leadership is in a team environment anyway. And so in terms of engagement, it is about dedicating time and commitment to your role. So you want to be holding yourself accountable for your actions. Partly because you know, you might have certain responsibilities, especially as a leader, you've got even more responsibilities towards your team. But also at the same time, it is about making sure that, you know, everyone is treated fairly, and that everyone, you know, the work that everyone's doing is fair as well. So that, you know, you're not, you know, dragging the team down, but, you know, you're also making sure that everyone is feeling comfortable with what they have to do. And of course, as a leader, it's important that you're constantly putting in your best effort, especially, you know, whenever you do something for the team. You know, as the team relies on you to play your part. But also B, it's about, you know, setting a good example as well. You know, especially if you're a leader, if you're not going to be acting, you know, in your best interests or in the team's best interests, then in that case, then the team might even, you know, feel less motivated or feel as though, you know, if you're getting away with slacking or something, then they might as well just give up. It's really about, you know, setting a good role model example for other people to follow as well. Yeah, and finally, like with communication as well, you know, having that open disclosure is really important in making sure that the team stays updated on any situation. And finally, with engagement, you can also go above and beyond, especially as a leader, or to, you know, display that extra step of leadership. You know, it's not just about doing the bare minimum. It's about, you know, trying to see what else you can do to, you know, better the team, and just, you know, and not just simply relying on the team to do everything for you. Okay, so now we'll talk about the professional skills. So this is, you know, I guess, more relating to, you know, potentially in the future with, you know, having work and all that. These are some of the key skills that you can definitely work on to help you, you know, prepare for those or prepare for the workplace. And so the four that I've highlighted here include the organization, the time management, decision making, and presentation as well. So with organization, it is very much about making sure you know, you can meet all the commitments of your role. So before you take up any role, especially in a leadership position, it's important that, you know, you're aware of what's expected of you, and that you're able to, you know, meet that demand as well. Especially as a leadership position where you're representing your team, and, you know, any slip up, you know, it will essentially have an effect on the whole team, not just yourself. So you definitely don't want that to happen, and you want to make sure that, you know, you're able to prevent that right from the get-go. So because of that, it is important that you're factoring in your commitments into whatever your weekly schedule or routine is. And that also fits into your time management skills as well, which we'll talk about a bit later. So some of the things that, you know, you might need to be aware of when you're organizing things might include, you know, meeting certain deadlines, whether that's, you know, completing a project on time for school, whether that's, you know, writing a speech on time so that you're able to, you know, rehearse and rehearse and present that. And it's also about, you know, getting certain things done within the team as well. So whether that's organizing team meetings and taking notes for the team as well, or whether that's designing and orchestrating different events that your team might be hosting. That's a really obvious example for a university where most of our student-led bodies is all about, you know, organizing programs for our fellow university students. And so it's really important that we're able to give ourselves enough time and enough and be able to have the necessary needs in place for us to be able to organize these events as well. Okay, and so